My name is Nathan Cross and I'm 39 years old. On Christmas morning 2023, while our two children were opening presents under the tree, my wife handed me an envelope wrapped in festive red paper with a bow on top. Inside were divorce papers and a note that said, "Consider this your Christmas gift. I want you out by New Year's." She smiled when she gave it to me, actually smiled like she just handed me the perfect present. What she didn't know was that I'd spent the previous 3 months preparing for this exact moment, and that the gift I had planned for her on New Year's Eve would destroy her life more completely than she could possibly imagine. But let me start from the beginning, because this story isn't just about revenge served cold over the holidays. This is about discovering that the person you've built a life with has been systematically planning your destruction while pretending everything was fine, and about the moment you decide that playing fair is over and playing to win is all that matters. My wife's name is Cassandra, though she goes by Cassie, and we've been married for 11 years when everything fell apart. We met in 2011 when we were both working at a tech startup in Seattle. I was a software developer making about $80,000 a year, and she was in business development making around $70,000. We got married in 2013, bought a house in a nice Seattle suburb in 2015, and had our 2 kids, Emma who's now 8 and Jake who's 6. For the first 8 or 9 years, I genuinely thought we had a good marriage, not perfect but solid, the kind of partnership where you support each other through challenges and build a life together. I worked hard, got promoted several times, and by 2023 I was a senior engineering manager making $240,000 annually. Cassie had moved into a director role at a different company making about $170,000. Combined, we were pulling in over $400,000 a year, living very comfortably in our $500,000 house that we'd bought for $320,000 back in 2015. Things started feeling off around August of 2023, about 4 months before that Christmas morning ambush. Cassie became increasingly critical of everything I did, constantly picking fights over minor things, complaining that I worked too much even though she worked just as many hours, accusing me of not being present with the kids even though I coached Jake's soccer team and helped Emma with homework every night. She started going out more with her work friends, coming home late, being secretive with her phone. All the classic signs were there, but I initially thought we were just going through a rough patch that couples sometimes hit after a decade of marriage. In early September, I came home early from work one day because a meeting had been canceled, and I found Cassie in our home office on a video call that she quickly ended when I walked in. She seemed flustered and defensive, claiming it was just a work call, but something felt wrong about her reaction. That night, after she'd gone to bed, I did something I'd never done before in 11 years of marriage. I checked our cell phone bill online to see who she'd been talking to. What I found was hundreds of calls and texts to a number I didn't recognize, often lasting an hour or more, happening late at night and on weekends. I ran the number through a reverse lookup service, and it came back registered to someone named Marcus Chin, age 43, living in Seattle. A quick search on social media revealed that Marcus was a divorce attorney, specifically one who specialized in high-asset divorces and maximizing settlements for his clients. My wife wasn't having an affair in the traditional sense, she was planning a divorce and had been consulting with an attorney for months without telling me. I sat there staring at the phone records, hundreds of calls going back to early July, and I realized that for the past 2 months Cassie had been systematically planning to leave me while pretending everything was normal. The next day, I called in sick to work and spent 8 hours meeting with my own attorney, a woman named Rebecca Morrison who came highly recommended by a colleague who'd gone through a difficult divorce 2 years earlier. I showed Rebecca everything, the phone records, the timeline, the evidence of Cassie's secret consultations with a divorce attorney. Rebecca listened carefully and then asked me a critical question. "Nathan, do you want to try to save this marriage or do you want to protect yourself?" I thought about it for maybe 10 seconds before answering. "She's been planning this for months while lying to my face every day. I don't want to save anything. I want to protect myself and my kids." Rebecca nodded. "Then here's what we're going to do. Washington is a community property state, which means everything acquired during the marriage gets split 50-50 unless there are specific circumstances that justify an unequal division. Your wife is consulting with Marcus Chin, who's known for being extremely aggressive and for coaching clients on how to hide assets and maximize their settlements. If she's planning to file for divorce, she's probably also planning to try to screw you financially. We need to get ahead of that." Over the next 3 weeks, Rebecca and I built a comprehensive protection strategy. First, we opened a detailed investigation into all of our marital assets, every account, every investment, every piece of property, documenting the exact values as of September 2023. Second, we hired a forensic accountant named David Park who specialized in tracing money movements and uncovering hidden assets. David's job was to track every dollar Cassie had access to and see if she was already moving money in preparation for divorce. Third, Rebecca had me start keeping a detailed journal of my interactions with Cassie and my time with the kids, documenting everything that could be relevant in custody proceedings. What David discovered in his initial investigation was shocking and gave us exactly the ammunition we needed. Starting in late July, right around when Cassie first contacted Marcus Chin, she'd begun systematically moving money out of our joint accounts into accounts I didn't have access to. She'd opened a separate checking account at a different bank and had transferred about $45,000 from our joint savings in increments small enough that I wouldn't notice, typically $3,000 to $5,000 at a time. She'd also opened a credit card in just her name and had been making charges that didn't show up on our shared credit card statements. Even more damning, David found evidence that Cassie had been transferring money to her sister Lauren, who would then transfer it to a different account that we couldn't fully trace but appeared to be another account in Cassie's name. Over the course of August and September, approximately $70,000 had been moved through this scheme. In total, Cassie had hidden away about $115,000 of marital assets that she was clearly planning to claim didn't exist or had been spent on legitimate expenses. Under Washington law, this kind of asset hiding and dissipation of marital funds could have serious consequences in divorce proceedings. Rebecca was absolutely delighted with David's findings. "Nathan, your wife just handed us a nuclear weapon. Deliberately hiding and dissipating marital assets is one of the few things that can justify an unequal division of property in Washington. We can argue that she should get significantly less than 50% because she's been fraudulently hiding money. But here's the key, we can't let her know we've discovered this until the absolute last possible moment. If she realizes we're onto her scheme, she'll try to move the money back or create explanations for where it went." For the next 2 months, from October through mid-December, I played the role of the oblivious husband while quietly preparing for war. I acted completely normal around Cassie, continued going to work, taking care of the kids, doing all the usual husband and father stuff. I pretended not to notice her late-night phone calls or her secretive behavior. I smiled and made plans for Christmas and discussed what we'd do for New Year's, all while knowing that she was planning to blow up our marriage during the holidays. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done, pretending everything was fine while knowing I was being betrayed, but Rebecca had been very clear that the element of surprise was crucial. Meanwhile, Rebecca and I were building an ironclad legal case. We had documentation of every hidden asset, every suspicious money transfer, every conversation with her divorce attorney that showed premeditation and planning. We'd filed for legal separation in mid-November but hadn't served Cassie with the papers yet. Rebecca's strategy was to wait until Cassie filed first or made her move, then hit her immediately with our own filing that included evidence of all her financial fraud. "Let her think she's in control," Rebecca explained. "Let her believe her plan is working. Then we'll show her that she's been playing checkers while we've been playing chess." In mid-December, about a week before Christmas, I noticed Cassie's behavior changed slightly. She seemed more confident, almost excited, like someone who was counting down to something important. She'd have these little smirks when she thought I wasn't looking, like she was enjoying a private joke. I knew from the timing and her attitude that the divorce papers were coming soon, and based on her personality and her apparent enjoyment of the situation, I suspected she was going to do it during the holidays to maximize the emotional impact. Rebecca and I prepared for multiple scenarios, but we agreed that Christmas or New Year's were the most likely times for Cassie to make her move. Christmas morning arrived and I woke up early with the kids like we always did on holidays. Emma and Jake were excited about presents, running downstairs to see what Santa had brought. Cassie came down a few minutes later in her robe, looking perfectly composed and relaxed. We did the whole Christmas morning routine, opening stockings, making coffee and hot chocolate, taking pictures of the kids with their gifts. Everything seemed completely normal and festive, just another family Christmas morning. Then around 9 o'clock, after most of the presents had been opened, Cassie pulled out one more gift from behind the tree. "Nathan, I have one more present for you," she said with that same little smile I'd been seeing for weeks. She handed me an envelope wrapped in festive red paper with a gold bow. "Go ahead and open it." The kids were distracted with their new toys, so they weren't paying attention. I opened the envelope slowly, already knowing what was inside but needing to see it to believe she'd actually do it on Christmas morning. Inside were divorce papers, a petition for dissolution of marriage filed with King County Superior Court dated December 22nd, and a personal note in Cassie's handwriting that read, "Consider this your Christmas gift. I want you out of the house by New Year's. The kids stay with me and you can see them on a schedule we'll work out through the lawyers. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I sat there holding the papers, and Cassie was watching me with this expectant expression, clearly enjoying my reaction or lack thereof. "Aren't you going to say something?" she asked. I looked up at her, and I made sure my face showed exactly the right amount of shock and hurt that she was expecting to see. "On Christmas morning? You're serving me divorce papers on Christmas morning while our kids are opening presents." She shrugged. "I wanted to start the new year fresh, and this seemed like the most efficient time to get things moving. You have a week to find somewhere else to stay. I've already talked to my attorney about custody and asset division, so we can keep this simple if you cooperate." I carefully folded the papers and put them back in the envelope. "I need some time to process this," I said quietly. "Can we at least get through Christmas Day before we talk about details?" Cassie seemed satisfied with that response. "Sure, we can talk after the holidays. But Nathan, this is happening. I've made up my mind, and nothing you say is going to change it. The marriage is over." She said it with such finality and confidence, like she'd already won and I was just a formality to be dealt with. I nodded and excused myself, going upstairs to our bedroom where I immediately called Rebecca. "She did it," I told Rebecca. "Served me with divorce papers on Christmas morning just like we thought she might. She's already filed, dated December 22nd, asking for custody and telling me to move out by New Year's." Rebecca's voice was calm and satisfied. "Perfect. That's actually ideal timing for us. She's filed first, which means we respond with our counter-petition and all our evidence. Since she's asking you to move out and demanding custody, we can argue that she's being unreasonable and trying to use the kids as leverage. How do you want to handle the next week?" "I want to do exactly what you suggested," I said. "I want to wait until New Year's Eve, let her think everything is going according to her plan, and then hit her with everything we've got when she least expects it." Rebecca laughed, actually laughed out loud. "Nathan, I've been practicing family law for 20 years, and I've never had a client with your level of strategic patience. Most people would want to retaliate immediately. The fact that you're willing to wait another 6 days while letting her think she's won is going to make this so much more effective. Let's finalize everything and plan for a New Year's Eve she'll never forget." For the next 6 days from Christmas through New Year's Eve, I played the role of the defeated, shocked husband. I stayed in the house but mostly kept to myself, acted depressed and uncertain, let Cassie believe that her plan had worked perfectly and I was too devastated to fight back. She was in an amazing mood all week, chatting happily on the phone with her sister and her attorney Marcus Chin, making plans for her new post-divorce life, casually discussing with me where I might stay and when I could see the kids as if it was all settled. She'd completely underestimated me, which was exactly what I'd wanted. During that week, Rebecca filed our counter-petition for dissolution of marriage, but we didn't serve it to Cassie yet. We wanted everything ready to go, all our evidence organized, all our legal arguments prepared, and then we'd serve her with the full package all at once for maximum impact. David Park completed his forensic accounting report, documenting every dollar of the $115,000 Cassie had hidden. Rebecca prepared a motion for unequal division of assets based on Cassie's fraudulent dissipation of marital funds. We prepared declarations for me detailing my involvement with the kids and my fitness as a parent. We assembled evidence of Cassie's aggressive approach to the divorce, including her Christmas morning ambush and her demand that I leave the house immediately. By New Year's Eve, everything was ready. Rebecca had arranged for a process server to deliver our counter-petition and all supporting documents to Cassie at exactly 8 p.m. on December 31, 2023. We'd also prepared a second set of documents to be delivered simultaneously to Marcus Chen at his home address, so he'd see everything at the same time as his client. The timing was deliberate and calculated, just like Cassie's Christmas morning surprise had been, but ours would be much more devastating because it would destroy the narrative she'd been building with her attorney for 6 months. December 31st arrived, and I spent the day being extra cooperative with Cassie, agreeing to whatever she suggested, acting like I was resigned to her terms. We'd agreed I'd leave the house that evening to stay at a hotel while she celebrated New Year's with the kids at home. I packed a bag and made a show of looking sad and defeated. At 7:30 p.m. I gave Emma and Jake long hugs, told them I loved them and would see them soon, and headed out to my car. Cassie walked me to the door with barely concealed satisfaction on her face. "Nathan, I know this is hard, but you'll see eventually that this is for the best. We'll work out something fair for everyone." I just nodded and drove away. What Cassie didn't know was that I wasn't actually leaving. I was driving to a coffee shop 3 blocks away where Rebecca was waiting. At exactly 7:55 p.m., Rebecca got confirmation from our process server that he was in position outside our house. At 8 p.m., the doorbell rang at our house and Cassie opened the door to find a professional process server holding a large envelope. "Cassandra Cross?" he asked. "Yes," she replied. "You've been served," he said, handing her the envelope and walking away. Cassie opened the envelope, probably expecting some kind of simple response to her divorce petition, and instead found a comprehensive counter-petition that was 40 pages long plus another 80 pages of exhibits and supporting documentation. The counter-petition didn't just respond to her divorce filing, it systematically dismantled every position she'd taken and exposed every scheme she'd planned. It documented the $115,000 she'd hidden, including bank statements, transfer records, and a forensic accounting analysis showing exactly where every dollar had gone. It included phone records showing hundreds of calls to Marcus Chen going back to July, proving she'd been planning the divorce for 6 months while pretending our marriage was fine. The petition argued for an unequal division of assets in my favor based on her fraudulent dissipation of marital funds, requested full transparency and accounting of all the money she'd hidden, and demanded that she be sanctioned for attempting to defraud me. On custody, we'd included detailed documentation of my involvement with the kids, my coaching of Jake's soccer team, my help with Emma's homework, photos and videos of time I'd spent with them, and character references from teachers, neighbors, and other parents. We'd also included evidence of Cassie's frequent late nights out and her prioritization of work and social activities over parenting, not to paint her as a bad mother but to show that I was equally if not more involved in the kids' daily lives. But the most devastating part of our filing was what it meant for Cassie's financial situation. In Washington, when someone is found to have hidden or dissipated marital assets, the court can award the innocent spouse not just their 50% share but also a portion or all of the hidden assets as a penalty. Rebecca's motion argued that I should receive 65% of all marital assets due to Cassie's fraud, which would mean she'd end up with significantly less than she'd planned. Additionally, because she'd initiated an aggressive, bad-faith divorce filing and had been caught hiding assets, we were seeking attorney's fees, meaning she'd have to pay for my legal costs on top of her own. Rebecca and I sat in that coffee shop waiting, and at 8:12 p.m. my phone started buzzing with texts from Cassie. The first one just said, "What the fuck is this?" The second one, a minute later, said, "You've been spying on me? You tracked my money?" The third one was all caps, "My lawyer says this is illegal." I didn't respond to any of them, just showed them to Rebecca, who smiled. She's panicking, which means Marcus Chin is panicking too because he just realized his client lied to him about hiding assets. This is going exactly as planned. Over the next 2 hours, I received 17 more texts and 6 phone calls from Cassie, progressing from angry to desperate to accusatory to pleading. She wanted to talk, wanted to work things out, wanted me to withdraw the counter-petition, claimed I was being unreasonable and vindictive. I didn't respond to any of it, just forwarded everything to Rebecca for documentation. At 10:30 p.m., I got a call from Marcus Chin himself, Cassie's attorney, which was highly unusual and suggested he was in serious damage control mode. I let it go to voicemail and his message was very carefully worded. "Mr. Cross, this is Marcus Chin representing your wife. I'd like to discuss the possibility of settling these matters without further litigation. Please have your attorney contact me at her earliest convenience." Rebecca listened to the voicemail and laughed. He knows he's screwed. His client lied to him about the hidden assets, which makes him look incompetent, and now he's facing a case where his aggressive strategy has backfired spectacularly. He wants to settle because he knows if this goes to trial, Cassie's going to get destroyed and he's going to look like an idiot. This is perfect, Nathan. Absolutely perfect. At 11:45 p.m., 15 minutes before the new year, I sent Cassie one single text message. "You gave me divorce papers on Christmas. I gave you the consequences of your fraud on New Year's Eve. Happy New Year, Cassie. See you in court." I spent New Year's Eve at a nice hotel in downtown Seattle, ordered room service, watched the fireworks from my window, and toasted the new year alone with a glass of champagne. It should have been depressing or sad, but instead I felt this incredible sense of clarity and empowerment. For 6 months, Cassie had been lying to me, manipulating me, and planning to destroy me financially while I played the role of the oblivious husband. She thought she was so clever, hiding money and working with an aggressive attorney and setting up her perfect ambush on Christmas morning. What she hadn't counted on was that I'd seen it coming, prepared better than she had, and turned her own schemes into weapons against her. The legal proceedings that followed were swift and absolutely devastating for Cassie. In early January we had our first court hearing on temporary orders, the preliminary decisions about things like who stays in the house, how assets are accessed, and what happens with the kids during the divorce process. Marcus Chin tried to argue that I'd violated Cassie's privacy by tracking her financial transactions and that our evidence of hidden assets should be excluded. Judge Robert Palmer, who was assigned to our case, shut that argument down immediately. Mr. Chin, your client moved marital funds without her husband's knowledge or consent. Mr. Cross was entirely within his rights to investigate and document those movements. Your motion to exclude evidence is denied. Judge Palmer was not at all sympathetic to Cassie's position. He reviewed David Park's forensic accounting report, looked at the documented evidence of hidden money transfers, and his face showed clear disapproval. Ms. Cross, can you explain to me why you transferred $115,000 of marital funds into accounts your husband couldn't access? Cassie tried to claim she'd been saving money for the kids' future and for household expenses, but Judge Palmer wasn't buying it. If you were saving for legitimate purposes, why wouldn't you discuss it with your husband? Why the secretive transfers through your sister's account? This appears to be exactly what Mr. Cross's attorney has alleged, a deliberate attempt to hide marital assets in preparation for divorce. The temporary orders that came out of that hearing were a complete victory for me. I was granted the right to remain in the marital home because Cassie had demanded I leave without legal justification. We were granted equal parenting time with the kids on a temporary schedule, completely undermining Cassie's plan to have primary custody from day one. All accounts were frozen so neither of us could move money, which meant Cassie couldn't continue her hiding scheme. And most importantly, Judge Palmer ordered Cassie to provide a full accounting of the $115,000 she'd hidden and to return it to a joint account within 30 days. Cassie was absolutely beside herself after that hearing. Her entire strategy had been built on getting me out of the house, establishing herself as the primary parent, and hiding enough assets that she'd walk away with more than her fair share. Instead, within 2 weeks of filing, she'd been exposed as someone who deliberately defrauded her husband, lost her credibility with the judge, and was now facing the possibility of an unequal division that would leave her with far less than she'd planned. Marcus Chin, her expensive aggressive attorney, was looking increasingly incompetent because his client had apparently lied to him about the hidden money. In February, Marcus Chin withdrew from representing Cassie, which is something attorneys very rarely do mid-case unless there's been a serious breakdown in the attorney-client relationship. My guess is that Marcus realized Cassie had put him in an impossible position by lying about the hidden assets, and he didn't want to continue being associated with a losing case that made him look bad. Cassie had to scramble to find a new attorney, and the only one who'd take her case on short notice was a much less experienced lawyer named Sarah Williams who charged half what Marcus did but had nowhere near his reputation or skill. The discovery phase of the divorce was brutal for Cassie. Rebecca subpoenaed every bank account, every credit card, every financial record, forcing complete transparency about where all the hidden money had gone. We discovered even more suspicious transactions that David Park hadn't initially found, including that Cassie had used some of the hidden money to buy expensive jewelry and designer clothes that she'd been hiding at her sister's house. She'd also used marital funds to pay for a vacation to Hawaii with her sister back in October, a trip she told me was a work conference. Every new discovery just made her look worse and strengthened our argument for unequal division. By March 2024, about 3 months after my New Year's Eve counter-petition, Cassie's new attorney Sarah Williams approached Rebecca about settlement. My client recognizes that some mistakes were made, Sarah said carefully, and she's interested in resolving this matter without further litigation. What that really meant was, Cassie knows she's going to lose badly if this goes to trial, and she wants to cut her losses. Rebecca and I discussed our settlement position, and we decided to be firm but not completely unreasonable. We demanded 60% of all marital assets to me and 40% to Cassie, equal parenting time with the kids, no alimony for either party, and Cassie had to pay $75,000 toward my attorney fees as a penalty for her fraud. Cassie initially rejected that offer, counter-proposing a 50-50 split with no penalty, but Rebecca made it very clear what would happen if we went to trial. Sarah, your client deliberately hid $115,000, lied to her husband for 6 months, ambushed him with divorce papers on Christmas morning, and has been caught in multiple financial deceptions. I have a 40-page trial brief ready to go documenting all of this, and I will absolutely destroy her credibility in front of Judge Palmer. The offer we've made is generous considering what we could ask for. Take it or we'll see you in court and your client will end up with even less. In late April, Cassie finally accepted our settlement terms. She agreed to the 60-40 split, equal parenting time, no alimony and $75,000 toward my attorney fees. The divorce was finalized in early May 2024, almost exactly 5 months after my New Year's Eve counterfiling. Under the final settlement, I kept the house, most of our retirement accounts, and the bulk of our liquid assets. Cassie got her car, a smaller portion of the retirement funds, and the satisfaction of knowing she'd destroyed her own divorce strategy through greed and deception. The financial impact on Cassie was severe. She'd planned to walk away from the marriage with at least half of everything plus hidden assets, probably totaling close to $700,000 given our net worth. Instead, she ended up with approximately $420,000, lost $75,000 of that paying my legal fees, and spent another $40,000 on her own attorneys. She walked away with about $300,000 net, compared to the $900,000 I ended up with. Her Christmas morning ambush and 6 months of scheming had cost her $600,000 in lost assets and legal fees. The custody arrangement worked out well for the kids, who adjusted to the new schedule of splitting time between two households. I stayed in our family home so Emma and Jake had continuity and stability in their primary residence. Cassie rented a smaller townhouse about 20 minutes away, and the kids go back and forth on a weekly schedule. I've been very careful never to badmouth their mother to them or discuss the financial aspects of the divorce. As far as Emma and Jake know, their parents just grew apart and decided to live separately, which is all they need to know at 8 and 6 years old. As for me personally, the experience of being systematically betrayed and then having to strategically outmaneuver my own wife was exhausting but ultimately empowering. I learned that I'm capable of playing the long game, of being patient and strategic even when I'm hurt and angry, of not letting emotions override smart decision-making. I also learned to trust my instincts. That feeling I had back in September that something was wrong was absolutely correct, and I'm glad I acted on it instead of dismissing it as paranoia. Today, about 14 months after Cassie handed me those divorce papers on Christmas morning, I'm in a much better place than I ever imagined. I've been dating someone new, a woman named Rachel who's a teacher and who I met through friends. She knows the whole story of my divorce, and she's been amazingly supportive and understanding. The kids like her, which is important to me. I got another promotion at work in the fall. Now I'm a director of engineering making about $280,000 a year. I've used some of my divorce settlement money to renovate the house and make it feel more like mine rather than the space Cassie and I shared. I'm genuinely happy for the first time in over a year, and I'm building a new life that's entirely on my terms. Cassie, from what I hear through mutual acquaintances, is struggling more than she expected. Losing $600,000 in the divorce settlement has significantly impacted her lifestyle, and she's had to cut back on the expensive tastes and social activities she'd become accustomed to. She's still at her same job but apparently had to withdraw from some professional organizations and networking groups because she couldn't afford the membership dues. Her relationship with her sister Lauren, who she'd used to hide assets, has apparently become strained because Lauren is worried about potential legal liability for her role in the fraud. And perhaps most tellingly, Cassie tried to contact me a few months ago to suggest we work together better for the kids, which I interpreted as her regretting how badly her divorce strategy had backfired. If there's a lesson in all of this, it's that deception and greed have a way of backfiring spectacularly when the other person is paying attention and prepared to fight back. Cassie spent 6 months planning what she thought was the perfect ambush, hiding money, consulting with an aggressive attorney, timing her Christmas morning surprise for maximum emotional impact. She thought she was so clever, so much smarter than me, so perfectly positioned to take everything she wanted. What she didn't count on was that I'd notice the signs, hire my own professionals, document everything, and prepare a counterattack that was 10 times more devastating than anything she'd planned. The week between Christmas and New Year's, when she thought I was defeated and resigned to her terms, I was actually preparing the legal nuclear weapon that would destroy her entire strategy. The divorce papers wrapped in festive Christmas paper were her attempt at cruel irony, giving me the gift of divorce during the holidays. My New Year's Eve counter-petition, served at exactly 8 p.m. on December 31st, was my response, showing her that I'd been 3 steps ahead the entire time and that her schemes had been turned into weapons against her. Some people have asked me if I regret how aggressively I went after Cassie in the divorce, if maybe I should have just let it go and agreed to split everything 50-50 without the fight. My answer is simple. She didn't just ask for a divorce, which would have been her right and something I might have been able to accept peacefully. She systematically planned to defraud me, hide marital assets, ambush me during the holidays, and take as much as she could while giving me as little as possible. She declared war, and I simply fought back with better weapons and better strategy. She got exactly the consequences she deserved for her actions. If you're going through something similar, if your spouse is acting suspicious or you suspect they're planning something, here's what I learned. Trust your instincts, hire professionals immediately, document everything, stay calm and strategic rather than emotional and reactive, and don't let the other side control the narrative or the timeline. Cassie thought she was controlling everything by planning secretly and striking on Christmas morning. What she didn't realize was that I'd been planning even more secretly and that I'd strike when it would hurt her most, right when she thought she'd already won. Subscribe to Man's Diary for more real stories about betrayal, strategic revenge, and men who refuse to be victims. Share your experiences in the comments. And remember, the best revenge isn't always about being cruel or vindictive. Sometimes it's simply about being smarter, more prepared, and more strategic than the person who's trying to destroy you. Happy New Year, and may your enemies always underestimate you the way mine did.